1. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, if I am a poor person living on a day-to-day subsistence below the poverty line, it's fair to say I'm probably upset or disappointed at my government, especially in many instances like that what we see in developing nations and other parts of the world where you have systemic graft and corruption, especially in these areas who get plunged further below the poverty line at the expense of other politicians who are making bank and buying their third home in the United States. We also see many instances of rampant undereducation and people not having access to basic education, food, healthcare, and other things that they literally need in order to be able to survive. We think that the fatal flaw of side proposition is misunderstanding that this debate isn't just about religion being good or bad, but also about what specifically states should do with regards their strategy, because this debate is largely also about resource allocation. A few strategic observations of top half clash. The first is that, like I mentioned, this debate isn't just about hope or religions being good or bad, because the motion isn't this House supports religious preaching or proselytization in poor areas. The motion specifically calls us to defend the burden of why, in instances where we have a shoestring budget, majority of that budget has to be reallocated to particular people coming from those religions and even those religions directly. Opening government's case at best proves the desire to have hope. That is admirable. But we live in the real world. This isn't a Disney movie. Because a lot of what they say is unnuanced or not grounded to the burden they have to defend, which is why majority of the money, especially in instances where it's little, has to go to religious preaching. My point of information to the Prime Minister received no response. My POI to the DPM was going to be, bro, churches and mosques are literally all around the corner. Why do we have to spend even more money in instances where we don't have a lot of money to be able to get the delta you want? The delta that opening government wants is likely to happen in status quo because religions have a natural incentive to get followers and proselytize to people in order to get a wide reach. Let's talk about opening opposition. Opening opposition is correct, but to a large extent, vague. At best, they talk about a skew to conservative religion and talking about complexities of pluralism. But let's impact it, because I don't think they were fully able to impact or weigh that. Here are some extraneous impacts. Number 1, the Catholic Church and conservative religions largely being anti-women in instances where they can't take positions of clergy and are seen as trad wives who have to be able to cook for their husband and take care of children. People from the LGBTQ community and trans persons, whether pre or post-op, not being seen as who they really are, and ultimately looking at homosexuality and being able to express love to someone of the same sex as a sin that will damn you forever into oblivion. Or even, God forbid, victims of rape and abuse who need to be able to get an abortion in order to save themselves and exercise their right to bodily autonomy are now seen as people who are sinners, harlots, and people who are disgracing it. The main question I have, which I don't think anyone fully answered, is how do we even know what religion to be able to put money on? And I think maybe we can assume it's going to be some sort of proportional allocation, taking proposition case at their best. But what we think that is going to do is going to plunge people into these particular problems. I'll deal with CG later. What is the path of closing opposition to the ESL final? We are going to talk about a couple of things. Number 1, this is a value judgment debate about political and economic allocation in terms of what states should do. It's not about hope, because hope exists in all sides. And I think true hope actually happens when people believe in their state, when people are fed, when people are vaccinated, when people are actually not forced to be dialyzed and placed or an organ registry because they have diabetes and the state has prevented them. Poverty alleviation and resource distribution is of utmost importance given the nature of scarce resources, which is something that no one, except for closing opposition, has contended with thus far. Money doesn't grow on trees, and we need to be able to deal with that particular reality. So, we need to be able to ultimately keep religions in check, because I'm not saying religions are bad. I'm saying that in status quo, absent this value judgment, religions are still going to be there. But what we want to prevent is a bias and skew towards their following and people who align with their ideology. The second thing I'm going to say is that there is a better solvency absent skewing resources to particular religions. How can this happen? It can happen through the proliferation of social welfare services in order to make things like vaccines, education, and other forms of things like access to police more important. Side proposition says they can do that too. But my question is, bro, how are you going to do that if you're spending majority of that on religion? We can't expect the religion to be able to buy these vaccines, religion to be able to teach you, religions to be able to hire police. Even if closing government is motivated by the right intention of saying, hey, we want politicians to care, on your side, it's a problem-solution mismatch because those politicians you claim to want to hold accountable get even farther in the problem when you put religions in the middle of it. We have the separation of church and state for a reason, and we think that absolute secularism, especially when determining how and where to spend particular budget, is the way to go. Because let's analyze. In instances where the state is perverse, what happens is that they use religion as a scapegoat in order to wash their hands clean of responsibility. That is a problem, and in instances where they want to get reelected, they're likely to even do that some more. But let's be generous. Even if these states are great, are cool, and are good, we continue to be able to want them to be proximate to people and not distract them from these things when religion gets involved. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate is about resource allocation and the lens in which states are able to use to distribute it, and we think the status quo is ultimately better. We don't need to disproportionately allocate money we don't have. I am very proud to stand on side negative.